Skyrim was a game I've always had massive respect for, but never really clicked with. I knew how good it was, I knew how many people still praise it even a decade later, but for some reason it never worked for me. Not only did I never finish Skyrim, I barely even started it properly. I'd make a character, play a couple hours, then drop it for months on end. But then again, that's happened before. Some games didn't grab me at first, but when I gave them another chance later down the line, something would suddenly click. And recently I've been on this huge fantasy kick. I finally got into Game of Thrones less than a year ago, and I've been walking that fine line between love and obsession. Around the same time I also came back to Lord of the Rings, one of my childhood favorites, just out of nostalgia, and actually ended up loving it even more. That mix of politics and magic and world building pulled me back in, and I suddenly started craving a game where I could actually live inside a world like that. That's when I thought of Skyrim again. So I decided to put aside all my past bad impressions and finally commit to it. And this time, something really clicked. Going into this new playthrough, I've encountered many issues which were apparent in my last tries. The graphics do look dated, but that was something I knew I could look past and later enjoy because this game has very cool world building and atmosphere. The combat even now felt very janky and unresponsive. Simply put, there wasn't much satisfaction in swinging a sword yet. And many other problems that could have been fixed with mods. I could have made the game look like a brand new game. I could have made my hitboxes touch more than one target. But I realized if I was going to play this game and really commit, I had to push through all my inconveniences and enjoy the game in its vanilla state. So that's what I did. I booted up Skyrim, played it a little, and the game was a complete mess. The textures would break a lot, animals would shake and float, there was this super annoying sound as if I was swimming. Sometimes my character would actually do the swimming animation while I was going up a hill, which made no sense. It was awful, and I didn't know really what to do, so I bought the special edition after learning that it's got better graphics and includes all the DLCs, which meant more content for me. Now thankfully, after I started playing the special edition, I wasn't able to find these bugs in my game anymore. While the game has a very strong opening, I would always lose interest right after. But I decided to push through, and then it started to grab more of my attention little by little. After getting out of the cave, I remember how I got on that cliff earlier and felt this sense of wonder. Could I really go up those mountains? That temple looks so interesting and unwelcoming. I want to go there. I obviously chose to go with the Stormcloaks because, hey, at least they didn't try to chop off my head, even if I wasn't on their shitty list.
Forget the list.
The game slowly opened up to me. Simply walking and finding a cool structure that would lead me to find a quest item which later on I would need felt very rewarding, as in Bethesda rewarding the player for open world exploration. But where Skyrim really grabbed me was a bit later on. I really like this war perspective where you can really tell right from wrong on each side. When I heard that Alfred killed the king with his voice, I was like, excuse me, is he Superman or some shit? I always associated Skyrim with dragons, rightfully so. I was eager to fight one after witnessing that massacre at Helgen, so when I heard that a dragon was flying around Whiterun, you know that had me excited, because that first confrontation with Alduin gave me the impression that one man is simply not enough to defeat one of these beasts. So Balgruuf, the Jarl of Whiterun, sent me with a group of soldiers, and this annoying prick, Irileth, or I think that was her name.
I'm starting to think.
I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, to take care of business. So I think you know which moment finally made me stick with Skyrim. The Dragonborn review, which, if you believe it or not, I never knew the game's story to this point, so I was completely unaware of there being a man born to slay dragons. Seeing the reactions of the soldiers to me absorbing the dragon souls was mind-blowing, because I was so confused as to why I'm being chased by light leaks. They started to tell me about the tales of the Dragonborn, one with the power within him to slay dragons and steal their powers. So this made me think, am I the Azor Ahai of Skyrim? And this was where the massive scale opened up to me, and I would go into gamer mode with Skyrim. For me, the Dragonborn reveal felt very awesome. Simply put, That felt exactly like what I wanted as a Game of Thrones fan. I was pretty much the prophesied hero Azor Ahai, what more could I ask for? The idea that dragons are returning to the world and that you are the one destined to stop them, that was the perfect setup for me. The main quest is good by my standards, but it could have been better. Alduin is hyped up as this world-ending threat, but outside the specific main quest missions, that threat never really feels present. You hear his name, people talk about him, but he's more of a background presence than a looming danger. Yes, dragons roam the open world and will attack you randomly, or even the NPCs, and that is great for a random encounter, but their presence feels a little hollow. You never really stumble on a village still smoldering from a dragon attack, or see NPCs terrified after a close call. They instead go up to him to fight, which is kinda funny. The real meaning of the Eye of the Tiger, right? A lion's heart. Bethesda didn't really lean into the destructive potential of dragons in the world itself. I'm not saying Alduin should constantly pop up while you're exploring, but he ends up feeling more like a scripted boss who waits for his turn, instead of an ever-present threat. Maybe I'm reaching here, maybe I'm wrong, but I kinda wish that Bethesda had done something a little more like what Resident Evil does with its tyrants. Imagine if Alduin could randomly show up, even if it's just rare, I don't care, to burn a settlement or resurrect a dragon you just killed. He didn't need to be present 24/7, just a tad bit more unpredictable. A little chaos would have gone a long way in my opinion. Bethesda has openly admitted that Game of Thrones was a major inspiration for Skyrim's world and tone, and it shows, which I'm happy about. The return of Alduin and his dragons clearly echoes the White Walkers from A Song of Ice and Fire, a forgotten evil from a mythic past, creeping back into the world while mortals fight over thrones and power. And also there's a prophesied hero. I think you can connect the dots if you didn't realize this. But the comparison only highlights what Skyrim kinda lacks. In Game of Thrones, the White Walkers are a looming systematic threat that gradually spreads dread. They are felt long before they're fully seen. But in Skyrim, Alduin just sort of appears. You don't feel the weight of his threat, cities don't seem panicked, and people don't talk about him unless they're scripted to. Most importantly, you're never forced to go up against him unless you decide to. Skyrim's strength is freedom, but it comes at a cost of urgency. Alduin isn't a looming apocalypse, he's just another quest marker. It's hard not to see how much they could have done with him. That said, the story still hit the mark for me around 80% of the time. It scratched that high fantasy itch I had going on, the dragons and the prophecy and the sense that the world is changing because of you. It wasn't downright perfect, but for the most of the journey, it was exactly the kind of fantasy story I had been searching for. There are some very high points in the story though. The Dragonborn reveal, you climb to High Hrothgar, if I said that right, and learning the power of the voice. The moment when you see Alduin resurrecting a dragon in front of you, that is very cool. And the Peace Council was a surprising twist, where politics briefly take a center stage in a game about ancient monsters. But this moment also felt a little flat for me. You're supposedly the one making these delicate negotiations, but the game kinda holds your hand on it, even if you offend Ulfric, like I did.
I expected better from you, Dragon Boy.
He won't actually just leave the premises. Bethesda clearly wanted to keep it casual and accessible, which is completely fine. But for me, that kinda took away some of the stakes. Paarthurnax though, that dude was just aura farming. Everything he says is the hardest I've ever heard.
What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?
Another standout moment for me was the quest where you trap the dragon in Dragon's Reach. It had this great sense of build-up, like you're pulling off a risky plan that could have gone completely sideways. There's something about everyone's tone during this sequence, like they're a bit on edge, almost like they know this could blow up in their face. I can't even explain it fully, but it just worked. It felt like a proper high-stakes moment in the story that paid off. You're not just chasing dragons, you're outsmarting them, bending the power dynamic in your favor. The final battle with Alduin was decent, but weirdly, I think the earlier fight on the Throat of the World, when you team up with Paarthurnax, was just much better, more compact, more cinematic. It felt like the real climax, while the actual final boss was a little underwhelming by comparison. So yeah, I think Skyrim's main quest is a good story. I enjoyed it for its scale and prophecy and the big fantasy stakes, but also could have been so much more. It plays it a bit safe, it's memorable, but not legendary. I hope that despite my criticism you can see that I did love this game, and the story was beyond solid. So when the looming threat of Alduin was done, and the world itself was saved, I was asking myself, what now? But all it took were two things. One reminder that I have the DLCs included in the special edition, and the second, the list of available quests. So despite the main quest being over, my journey with this game was far from over. It had only just begun. One thing I started to notice after like the 40th hour mark was how boring fighting dragons became. Because while in the beginning it was this very cool thing happening to you, towards the end of my playthrough it started just to feel tedious. When I was only a few hours in and I met one of these things, I felt stoked. Because the fight had some mistakes due to my level, and I actually had to heal mid-fight compared to later on, where I would just use Dragon Rend and the fight would be over in like 20 seconds. I swear to God, 20 seconds. I'll put one on the screen just to see how it usually happens. In the past, after killing a dragon, I felt satisfied. Later on, with this game's weird scaling, that feeling slowly started to fade away. The only memorable moments later on with dragons were when I was attacked by two at the same time, and one of the giants just killing it for me. In the end, killing dragons started to feel like a design of the past. And I think that's because the scaling in Skyrim is weird, as I just mentioned before. For example, the troll you meet on your way to High Hrothgar for the first time early in the game was way too powerful for me to go up against. If I didn't use a shield, he would kill me in 2 hits, and if I did use one, I would be lucky to survive 3. Maybe that was just for me, because to be fair, I was only about level 7 if I remember correctly. So I just decided that it wasn't worth it, and I started to go around them by hugging the mountains. A bit later on, I'll run also into these mages or necromancer or anybody who had some magic, and they would completely kick my ass to the ground. I would sometimes have to redo the whole section half a dozen times just because I needed a new approach due to their damage output. In contrast to dragons, which already started to become really easy to defeat, makes no sense to me that a literal weapon of mass destruction, the thing that everybody was shitting their pants about, looked like a warm-up against these guys. And this is the last of this enemy rant, I swear. Recently enemy NPCs became kind of an afterthought. 90% of the time they wouldn't get anywhere close to bringing down my health, or they would die in less than 3 light swings of my weapon. So fighting them had no point any longer. So I just started to fucking walk past them. And I won't say anything about magic for the enemies or for the player because I didn't use it much. I prefer to engage in close-up combat instead of long range or magic, but if I had to pick one way of fighting which I don't have any real problems with, it would definitely be archery. As for the shouts, I only used a dozen of them or so, but I'll admit, there is real versatility there. So many options for builds, if I may call them that make the game way more fun. Call of Valor was my go-to whenever I felt outnumbered. It balanced the odds really nicely so I can actually target the main guy. Fire Breath, Unrelenting Force, even Slow Time, they all give you really cool options. That being said, the Dawnguard DLC was a surprisingly nice shift. I liked how it added another style to the game. By that I mean becoming a literal vampire lord, if you accept Harkon's little gift, which I didn't because I thought he was an asshole. But Dragonborn was probably my favorite questline in the whole game, alongside the Civil War conclusion. I sided with the Imperials because I was loyal to Whiterun, of course, that's where I had my home and I spent a lot of time. And I also really liked how the questline escalated. It felt cool slowly regaining control of Skyrim and then eventually laying siege to Windhelm to put an end to it all. Sure, the battle with Ulfric and the other forgettable guy, I don't even remember his name, was kinda meh. Kinda whatever, but I still loved how they wrapped up the whole storyline. The Dragonborn DLC stood out to me for a couple of reasons. Not only did it create a whole new map with Solstheim, if that's the right way to say it, but Miraak was just 10 times more interesting as a villain than Alduin. This contrast between two Dragonborn, similar in power but very different in intentions and ambitions, was very engaging. I loved how Mirak would occasionally pop up and steal my dragon souls. That sneaky little bastard. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. His presence felt stronger, especially since the residents were directly affected by him. And the final boss, I had to take off my hat in respect. I honestly thought it was marvelous. Just my opinion. But outside all of the quests and enemies, there is one thing that never stopped impressing me: the atmosphere. If any of you have watched my videos before, then you know I'm a big atmosphere guy. Your game has bad atmosphere? Bye. Yours has a good one? Good. But in Skyrim's case, it isn't just good, it's amazing. The world building is absolutely stunning. It was more or less what I expected at first, but over time it somehow became even better. The size of this world is insane. Exploring the environment felt incredibly immersive because of how consistent it was at rewarding the player and constantly leaving you amazed by what you are seeing. I love how this game painstakingly creates these massive, gorgeous areas only to use them for like 2 story missions, which is wild and incredible. But none of this would hit as hard if it wasn't for one of the best official soundtracks of all time. I'm honestly really glad that I finally get the chance to utilize more of it because it's perfect from start to finish. It's amazing for fighting sequences, for nighttime or daytime ambience, for cave exploration, for everything. The soundtrack doesn't miss, ever. It makes the lands of Skyrim truly a perfect fantasy world that I seeked so goddamn hard. Thank you for watching my video. I was sweet, and I'll see you next time.